His name is BJ Rains. BJ, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, Boise State Twitter was fired up yesterday when it was discovered that ESPN has Andy Avalos as a former BYU linebacker, BJ. Where does Coach Avalos rank among the former BYU linebacker greats?
Yeah, I think Boise State fans were wondering who at ESPN works for BYU or something to switch that around. It was kind of like the Wikipedia pages that get updated with random info sometimes. But, yeah, there was a fun little thing about that. And of all the switches to make, the new head coach, and, of course, it had to be BYU. That certainly riled some folks up yesterday.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Okay, let's talk about Andy Avalos and what is expected. Obviously, a former player and assistant coach, has been the DC at Oregon. He's back now. Takes over for Brian Harsin, who goes to Auburn, takes the money. We know Bronco Mendenhall did it at Virginia. We've been there. What's the expectation? Can he keep up what Boise State's been doing, which is compete at a national level at a really high level?
Well, the last two coaches they had the first year, they won the Fiesta Bowl. Chris Peterson there in 2006, Brian Harsin in 2014. So fans are wanting nothing less than getting back to a New Year's Six bowl game and winning it right off the bat. I mean, certainly they're the favorites in the Mountain West. There's some good teams in the West Division in terms of Nevada and San Jose State, but they're the pick in the Mountain Division. And I think they want them to, not only pick up where they left off, but maybe even have more success. I mean, I think some fans were even a little disappointed in terms of the conference championships. They lost in the championship game last year. They lost at home to Fresno State a couple years ago, didn't even qualify one of the years. So I think some people actually think there's another level to reach. And so he was the obvious pick. He was right from the start. He was the obvious pick. He played there. He was a longtime assistant coach there, was only gone for 2 years, so still knows like half the roster. So he was the obvious pick. And I think it was a great choice. And I think fans are fired up. And I think it's been a nice, fresh, breath of fresh air for media, fans, everybody around the program. There's a real new sense of energy heading into the season.
What's the relationship like between Boise State and the Mountain West Conference, given all of the uncertainty that's happening with conference realignment and expansion potentially out there in the near future?
Well, I just talked to Craig Thompson, the Mountain West commissioner down in Las Vegas at Mountain West Media Days, and he said he understands it. He said he's had numerous heart-to-heart conversations with the president, Dr. Marlene Trump, and the AD, Jeremiah Dickey, and he understands their perspective. He said that he would do the same thing, as should the other 11 teams in the league. You're always looking to see what's out there and see if there's a better opportunity for you. Craig Thompson believes that opportunity, the best opportunity right now for Boise State is in the Mountain West. That obviously could change based on conference realignment and all that stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But, the emails and things that I had uncovered at our paper about Boise State looking to leave and Brian Harsin being very unhappy and all that, that was obviously a big story at the time. But, where they took some shots at Craig Thompson and his leadership. But, Brian Harsin's moved on, and it's a fairly new president and a new athletic director. So a lot of leadership changes at Boise State in the last couple of years, even with Avalos. So I think that the relationship is fine. I think Boise State is happy to be in the Mountain West, but certainly what's happened the last week or so, may have altered what their future ends up being in the next couple of years.
Certainly BYU can empathize with Boise State in feeling like, hey, we're one of the premier programs in this league, if not the premier program. We would like different treatment. Hey, that relationship didn't work out. BYU divorced the Mountain West. So listen, BYU fans, BYU gets it, what Boise State has gone through and is going through. So to your point, it feels like at some point Boise State's a really good candidate for expansion should it come to that. BYU obviously feels like it is as well. Do you feel like these two teams in the next couple years are going to be in a different league?
It's tough to say. I'll say this. The Mountain West is not going to have the same 12 teams it does now 2 years from now. I feel pretty confident saying that, whether they add teams or teams leave. I certainly think this is the opportunity for Boise State. And I'll say this, the new athletic director, Jeremiah Dickey, in his 6 months on the job has already been pretty bold in terms of making some decisions and thinking outside the box a little bit. He was willing to move 2 basketball games to like a 5,000-seat arena in a different county out in Nampa just so they could have fans at one point. And that riled up some people. I mean, he's willing to kind of do whatever it takes. And so I do think he's the right athletic director for Boise State. He actually came from Baylor, where he was the number 2 AD at Baylor for 3 years. So I think that his ties to the Big 12 certainly come into play here. And it's just very, interesting because I just think Boise State doesn't have a baseball team. They had one for like 6 months and then it went away again last year. That's going to hurt them when it comes to expansion. Their academics aren't maybe as high as the Pac-12 and some of these conferences would like to see in terms of a law school and some of the doctoral things that you need to have. So I just think that it's not a slam dunk that other schools would want them. But I think if it's going to happen, it would have to happen with BYU. I think BYU is the perfect partner for them. I think from a travel standpoint for volleyball and soccer and some of the other leagues, you can partner up for the road trips. So the West Virginias of the world or all the teams traveling out west wouldn't just come all the way for one game. So I think there's a lot to be done, but I think a BYU Boise State, marriage and a package deal would seem to make a lot of sense. I just know that it has to happen for all sports. At first Boise State was looking at the American just for football, and that really wouldn't work because then the other sports have to get into a lower level. So wherever they go, Boise State wants it to be for all the sports. And I certainly think the Big 12 is becoming a more of a possible option at this point.
BJ Rains, Boise State beat writer for the Idaho Press, with us on BYU Sports Nation. BYU finally beat Boise State on the blue last year, and I know it was a weird COVID year. The Cougars had the number 2 overall draft pick, quarterback Zach Wilson. That offense was rolling, and Boise State had some injuries, Hank Bachmeier notably. Has something changed within the rivalry now that BYU has finally beaten Boise State on the blue?
Well, I think so, and I had a tweet that I remember from that game where a lot of your fans weren't very fond of it in terms of excuse making or things like that, whatever they wanted to say. But I mean, the fact of the matter was Boise State played its 4th string quarterback for the majority of that game. I mean, you mentioned Hank Bachmeier being out. Jack Sears also went out in the first quarter on a helmet-to-helmet hit and had a concussion, and so they had to play a true freshman 4th string quarterback for 3/4 of that game. And so, would Boise State have won? Probably not. Would the game have been more competitive and closer? I believe so, and a lot of Boise State fans believe so. So I think there is a bad taste in their mouth from the way that game went down. They didn't get a chance to show, their full strength of roster and what they can do. Again, I don't think they would have won the game, but I don't think it would have been a blowout. And so I think that does sit, not well with Boise State's fans, and I think they're looking forward to it. And you remember the year before down in Provo, it was the same thing. Hank Bachmeier was out again, and they had to play a backup quarterback and lost by 3 points. And that was the only loss Boise State had that year going into the bowl game. They were 12-1, and they had a 3-point loss in the rain at BYU with a backup quarterback. So I think Boise State just feels like they haven't had a chance to be at full strength in a while, and it's shown on the field. And so I think they're very looking forward to this game, and they've had a tough time down in Provo too. I think they've lost 3 of the 5 down there or something like that since this series started. So it's been tough down there, and I know it's going to be a different looking BYU team, but I think Boise State is looking forward to hopefully being at full strength and having what they consider more of a fair shot in this one.
Yeah, let's get starting quarterbacks for both teams, because Baylor Romney was the 3rd string in 2019 too. So it's like, hey, everyone, can we have Jaron Hall or whoever BYU is going to have versus Hank Bachmeier? That would be fun. Okay, let's talk about this version of Boise State like you were talking about. Obviously, a new head coach in Andy Avalos. Tim Plow, a new OC. Will the offense be similar to what kind of Boise State has done the last several years?
It's going to be similar and a little bit different in terms of, we haven't really had a chance to see it. We've just heard about it because in the spring game, they really watered it down. They opened the season at Central Florida on the opening Thursday night, and they didn't want to show anything. But they're talking about, very, very fast up-tempo, no substituting, running up to the line. They talk about having multiple options on every play. The offensive coordinator that came from UC Davis, Tim Plow, they routinely led the FCS in a lot of the offensive numbers and passing numbers. And he said that his goal every game is hashtag half 100. He said he doesn't like to even look at the scoreboard until they've scored 50 points. And so that excited a lot of Boise State fans. And I know he was, a little, kind of just having fun when he said that. But that half 100 hashtag is kind of stuck around Boise. And they're expecting big things from the offense. They got a lot of their key pieces back, 4 offensive linemen, most of their skill positions. So the offense has a chance to be really, really good this year. And I think that's the part of the team that they feel best about. But defensively, they feel good as well. So I think there's a lot of reason for optimism here in Boise.
Boise State football insider BJ Rains on BYU Sports Nation. Who is Boise State's best player this season? Is it George Holani? Is it Hank Bachmeier? Or is it somebody else?
I'm going to go somebody else. I'm going to go Khalil Shakir, wide receiver. He's got a chance to be probably not first round, but definitely second day draft pick. If things go well, he could be anywhere from the 2nd to the 5th round, probably when you look at mock drafts. He had 52 catches in 7 games last year, almost 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, I believe. He's first team all Mountain West receiver, and they got some pretty good receivers. So he's, been on a lot of the preseason lists and even some honorable mention All-American lists last year. He's a very dynamic wide receiver. He was a 4-star kid coming out of high school that picked Boise State over UCLA and a couple other schools. and came in right away as a true freshman and played. And he's back for his senior year. There was some thought he'd go to the NFL last year, but he's back for his 4th year. And I think he wants to have a monster season and parlay that into the NFL. And Hank Bachmeier is from the same area as him, so that's kind of his favorite target, and looks for him a lot. And he usually makes that payoff worth it because he's a heck of a receiver. They give it to him in the backfield. He can run on the fly sweeps and things like that. He's even takes the ball out of the wildcat and has thrown a couple passes and trick plays. So he's kind of their Swiss Army knife, can do it all guy at wide receiver, and clearly their best receiver, and I think their best offensive weapon. So if Khalil Shakir can stay healthy, I think he has a chance to have a monster season and go into the NFL a year from now.
BJ, great stuff. And just to be clear, you are confirming that Coach Avalos is not a former BYU linebacker, right?
You know, I do have some pretty good sources, and but I've been unable to confirm that one 100%. But I do think that's probably accurate. Yes.
Thanks, BJ. Great to talk with you.
Yep. We'll see you October 9th, guys. Take care.